In this lesson, we're going to discuss what differential privacy is at a high level. Differential privacy is actually quite a new field. It recently started with statistical database queries around 2003, and even more recently has been applied to contexts such as machine learning. The general goal of differential privacy is to ensure that different kinds of statistical analysis don't compromise privacy. Now, when I say statistical analysis, I mean it in the most general term of we have some sort of training data or database or just a data set about individuals, and we want to make sure that our statistical analysis of that data set does not compromise the privacy of any particular individual contained within that data set. Now, in order to be able to accomplish this goal, we first need to propose a robust definition of privacy. And if you think about privacy yourself, and perhaps conversations that you've had with people you know or have listened to on the news, since privacy is such a hot topic these days, you might have heard a definition something like this. Privacy is preserved if, after the analysis, the analyzer doesn't know anything about the people in the data set. They remain unobserved. But if you think about this definition of privacy in the context of your home and why you have blinds and a front door and all these kinds of things, it's to ensure that information about you doesn't leak at all. However, in the context of statistics, this is really insufficient, and really in all cases of machine learning, because we're trying to learn something about a data set without learning specific things about individuals, which might be sensitive or might harm them in some way. So what we really need is a better definition. In 1977, a reasonable definition was proposed, which was this, quote, anything that can be learned from a participant in a statistical database can be learned without access to the database, or at least with that definition. That would mean that we had preserved individuals' privacy. Now, in the context of statistical analysis, this definition is basically saying, okay, anything you actually do learn about a person should be only public information. This definition is reasonable, it's okay, but the problem is that this is still insufficient for statistical analysis. Imagine if we're trying to train a classifier to predict cancer in CT scans, but these CT scans haven't been published anywhere else. So we train our deep neural network to learn how to classify cancer in a CT scan. But we ask the question, does this classifier violate privacy? Well, all the information that it learned came from a private data set, which did not exist anywhere else. Thus, according to this definition, information from this private data set was leaked, even though we only leaked information pertaining to the general classification of what tumors look like. Furthermore, this definition of anything that can be learned about a participant from a statistical database can be learned without access to the database is nearly impossible to enforce. How can we possibly know what facts in a dataset are also available publicly somewhere else? Finally, this definition assumes that information which has been made public elsewhere isn't harmful to an individual. Consider if it's been made slightly public, maybe in some circles, that an individual has a disease. Clearly, this does not mean that it's now our right to continue to propagate this information. So, as you can see, this definition fails for several reasons. First, it prevents us from learning anything from private data sets, defeating the purpose of using them at all, while it also allows us to learn and propagate information just because it's already public, which is in the base case impossible to know, and in the worst case, harmful information to spread even further. At a high level, this definition just doesn't capture the kind of protection that we want to have around individuals. It doesn't capture the idea that we want, in truth, we're not really trying to protect information, we're trying to protect people, right? So this leads to the modern definition by Cynthia Dwork, who is widely recognized as a pioneering figure in the field of differential privacy. And perhaps if I can say so, she's the godfather of differential privacy. The intuitive definition she proposed goes like this. Differential privacy describes a promise made by a data holder or curator to a data subject, and the promise is like this. You will not be affected, adversely or otherwise, by allowing your data to be used in any study or analysis, no matter what other studies, datasets, or information sources are available, which she describes in her book, The Algorithmic Foundations of Differential Privacy. I highly recommend reading this book, as it is the general resource for differential privacy. So as you can see here, this definition of differential privacy is even broader than the previous one, and obviously extremely challenging to fulfill. But the true goal of the field of differential privacy is to propose these tools and techniques that allow a data holder to make these kinds of promises to individuals who are being studied.